Okay, thanks again for joining us. This is Cassie Prather with Woodford County Health Department alongside Corey Cooley with What's Up
Yes.
Woodford Network.
Yep.
And we are continuing on our journey this month, bringing awareness and also highlighting supports in our area for all things mental health. And so, with that, I would like to introduce Lisa and Stephen with Bluegrass Care Navigators. We're going to be talking about some things this morning. Again, some of these things we just want to bring awareness to.
Right.
And then also let folks know that there are supports out there. They're very close. This one's a little bit different in that it's the grief side of mental health supports. And so I'm really interested to
Right.
hear what you all have to say.
For sure.
Personally, I lost my mom in February, and it was not expected.
Right.
And so I know Corey has lost his mom as well,
2 years, May 20th. Yep.
and that's a whole.
That was wild.
Well,
Yeah.
you're right, and it's just
Totally. It's a way different stage, I feel like, in grief. I don't know if I ever will, I think I'll be grieving for the rest of my life.
right.
It's just, it's a certain stage, maybe, I feel like, where I can talk about it. And I'm sure you guys are like, oh, that's called this and that and this. Yeah. So,
Yes.
but I'll let you all speak to that. But yes, I'm really excited about this episode particularly. But this whole month is really important. I know the Chamber is really pushing this Mental Health Awareness Month. And yeah, you're getting a new episode from Miss Cassie every Monday. So I'm excited.
Yes, I wish we could do this year round.
Yeah. Yeah.
Until we break down all the stigmas and make this a part of our wellness. Whether it's, I think we need to check up probably monthly, maybe more. I think personally, going to mental health therapists should be as normal as seeing a dentist or anything else.
For sure.
Even when things are great.
Yeah, that's probably the main time to go.
Right.
I think. Yeah.
To get you ready, because
just
things
to
are
stay right.
Yes. And with you, I feel, my wound is still pretty fresh with Mom. Still in the. Sometimes I feel like I'm still in denial.
Yes, yeah.
And when I realize she's not there, she's not going to call. I can't call her. There we go again.
Yes.
And this particularly, in full disclosure, was just a particularly bad weekend. We're going into Mother's Day. And so, anyway, we are always very open with
Yes.
how we're
If you
feeling.
can't tell,
And
we
That's
are
great.
yes,
open book, honestly.
Absolutely.
Well,
so we're so glad.
I wanted to kind of piggyback on that because I'm going to show my nerd here for a little bit.
Do it.
At the end of one of the Harry Potter movies, Harry asks Albus Dumbledore, "Is this all just happening in my head?" And he's like, "Well, of course it's happening in your head. It doesn't mean it's any less real."
Right.
We have to start thinking of, that our brain is just another organ. And if you have vision problems, you have no problems wearing glasses or contacts.
Yes.
If your pancreas goes bad, you have no problems taking insulin. If you have hypertension, you have no problems taking a medication for that,
Wow, yeah.
or doing the diet and exercise and other therapies. Well, mental health is the same thing. This is an organ. Sometimes it goes bad. Sometimes it's temporary. Sometimes it's genetic, and you're going to struggle your whole life. But there are therapies. There are people to talk to, and possibly medications if needed.
I like that.
It's no different than your heart.
Absolutely.
Well
Absolutely. Yes. That's a great.
I mean, exactly.
Point.
It's a perfect piggyback. I never thought of it that way. But I mean, yeah, why wouldn't you? Yeah, you wear glasses. You have surgeries and checkups and everything. So beautiful.
But on the same vein, we have health things that we can do that we don't have to pay a copay from our insurance because they're covered, colonoscopies and mammograms and dental cleanings and all of this. Why don't we have the same for mental health? Like, yes, there are
Exactly.
some
Wow.
companies that are big enough to have an EAP and you might get 3 or 4 free sessions, but why is this not a regular checkup like you have with your dentist?
Absolutely.
We said EAP. I'm gonna have to. I'm the layman of the
employee assistance program. Some of
Cool,
the
okay.
larger companies will have an employee assistance program
Okay.
that include, things like financial advice or mental
Yeah.
health, support and
I
things
can
like
see
that.
that. Yeah.
Dr. King, I wanted to follow up on what you were saying too, just about treating the brain and our mental health as anything else that we would in our regular health. I like to think of grief as similar to a cut on your arm. If you've got a cut on your arm, you're going to bandage it. You're going to
Right.
treat it. It might take a few weeks to heal.
Sure.
It might take a little longer to heal. And I think grief is similar in that way, where we have this expectation that we should get over grief really quickly. And sometimes that grief can take a while to heal, and we've got to let it go through that healing process.
Yes.
So you all were talking about your recent losses, and there is a journey in grief where you can be right after it and processing that immediate grief, but also 2 years later, you might still be working through that grief process and
Absolutely.
that grief journey, and that's okay. And I think that's something that a lot of people need to hear, is that there's not a definite time on your grief journey. It could take your entire life.
I'm done.
Yes, I
feel
know.
great now.
I
Like,
know.
And allow that process to happen.
Yes.
That's why we're here, and that's what we want to encourage
It's
everybody
almost
to
like
do.
the bigger the cut, you can also, I'm thinking bigger the cut, more likely you can have a scar. And maybe that's I feel like obviously that's a deep cut, and maybe I'm getting to that area now. Maybe it's, it's just it's still there. Sometimes when it's really cold, I can still feel it, that kind of thing. I like analogies. So
Me too.
So
I'm
you
not-
had talked about earlier wanting to call your mom and realizing, oh my
Yes.
gosh, she's gone. Well, I'm actually, all of the bereavement counselors are reading a book together called The Grieving Brain. And it's written by a neuropsychologist, Mary Frances O'Connor, I believe is her name. And she talks about how when we are in relationship with people, our brain creates neural pathways where we are like having a virtual world where if I said, where's your daughter right now? You could tell me, you could give me a pretty good guess where she is. And we keep track of our people in our brain. And so when they pass away and those regular habits and visits and phone calls and texts aren't happening, our brain hasn't caught on yet because it is very resistant to changing that virtual map. And so it takes days, weeks, months of not having the same patterns before our brain can finally say, okay, I need to redo my map because it's not any good anymore. So if you think of a stroke victim going to PT to learn to walk or talk again, they're having to create new neural pathways.
Right.
We are doing the same thing in grief. First, our brain has to give up the neural pathways that we have, and then we have to create new ones. And so this really it's not a weakness. This is how we were created. They're designed. We were designed to be in relationship with people, and these relationships are important to our mental health, our spiritual health, our physical health. And so it just takes, like you said, it takes time. I'm 24 years past the death of my mom, and there are still days that I will bawl,
Yeah, man.
just certain holidays or whatever,
Right.
cleaning out stuff. And I'm like, okay, I can't keep carrying this around.
For sure.
I've got to finally donate it. And, you just kind of have a moment.
The
Absolutely.
moment, yes.
Yep.
But you said earlier, I think I will always grieve. Yes, you will always grieve because you will always love.
Right.
And unless you can stop loving the person, you won't stop grieving. But our relationship to the grief changes over time, and it won't be as raw.
I'm so glad this is being recorded
Yeah.
because I want to take notes on everything you all are saying. It is
Absolutely.
so true. It is,
Yeah. Well, and it's great that, it helps me. I'm having to swallow a little deeper
Yes.
some of these conversations, but it's good. It's healthy. That was, geez, just to allow yourself to bawl, to cry,
Yep.
I think is important. It just helps because I'm guilty of, and actually throughout this process, I don't know if it was our family, the way we were raised, but we didn't really, I don't say show emotion. Obviously we loved each other. We all hugged and that stuff, but it's, mom's saying was always business as usual. So like as soon as she passed, I worked with her in real estate, so I knew I could hear her like, you better get your butt on that phone, and you better call all the clients that I have now, because I don't want them hearing and worrying about their deal, their house, because all these people. I mean, obviously they all loved my mom, but like, it's sad, but this is a lot of money. I mean, it's important for them. So I just jumped right into that, and on the phone, and having to tell people, 10, 20 times, and hearing 10 to 20 reactions, different reactions from them hearing that she's passed. So that was like, oh my gosh, it was like a pick, picking away. And so I just disappeared into that. And then as that started to get that under control, I thought, okay, well, hey, look, I'm just going to keep going, but you can't do that. You can't stuff it down. You can't ignore it. So it was a little delayed, some aspects of it, but yeah, it was very therapeutic to be able just to, have somebody like my wife, my daughter was there for me, and it was just, I couldn't have done it without them. And I'm sure you hear that a lot, where it's great to have yourself trained and know that you're going through grief, but man, there's nothing like having. Even me and Cassie, we've talked. It's nothing like having other people. I'm sure you guys have run into that. Is there any scenarios where people, either people haven't? If they don't have somebody like that, or any type of advice that can go out there for that?
Well, I think one of the things that I see working with people who are grieving is those folks who have a really good social circle. They have maybe a spiritual base of some sort. It doesn't have to be organized religion, but they kind of know where they are spiritually. They tend, not that they don't grieve, but they tend to maybe not have the intensity. Obviously, at times they do, but it seems to me that they tend to move through the healing process a little bit quicker.
Right.
And so what we see as a natural progression is kind of starting out in individual to kind of get through some of those hardest stories. If you think of grief as like a piece of sea glass, which is just a broken bottle, if you pick up that bottle before it's been in the sea for a while, it's going to be all sharp edges. And if you try to carry it around with you, it's going to cut you and hurt you. But in the ocean, it rolls around in the coral and the broken shells and the sand, and that takes the edges off. So telling your story in individual and in group, talking to people, share a story about my mom, tell me about my dad, what was he like when he was little, or what have you. These are ways that you chip away the edges of that grief. And then eventually you can carry it around a lot easier, and it's not going to be, dangerous and sharp.
Dang.
I know. Wow.
Sorry.
Man. This is exactly. This is better than we could have ever planned.
And that's the show, everybody.
We see a natural progression as we try to start out in individual, because that kind of builds the relationship.
Well, I'm my own worst enemy.
And it builds the trust. Yeah. Because a lot of people are like, oh, group is not for me. But then when they're ready and when we have a group available, we're like, I really think you're going to benefit. We try a lot of times. It doesn't always work out. We try a lot of times to have similar losses. So a spouse loss group, a child loss group, a parent loss group. But we're open. We don't always have enough for one specific group. We've had men's loss group in the past that was really successful, even though there are different types of losses. But what we find is that when I say something like, this is completely normal, it kind of goes in one ear and out the other sometimes. But when 12 other people are saying, oh no, that's completely normal, I'm doing that too, it is such a relief. Like, okay,
for sure.
First, I'm not alone. There are other people like me in my community. And secondly, this is a place that I can come and I can talk about my loved one, and nobody is scared of me talking of my loved one. When I lost my mom, it was my first week in graduate school. I was surrounded by professors who were all psychologists, who would say, hey, Lisa, how are you? And then practically run the other direction, because they were afraid to talk to me. They didn't know what my reaction would be. They had no idea what they would do if I started crying. And so I'm surrounded by professionals who don't know how to talk to somebody who's grieving, and I knew there was a problem.
Yes.
We didn't have a single class in grief and mourning. And it's the one thing that we all have in common.
Yeah.
No matter what age, race, religion, country you're from,
Yeah.
we all have that in common. And in most graduate training programs, there's nothing beyond Elizabeth Kubler-Ross's The Stages of Grieving.
So, Dr. King, what recommendations would you have to individuals who want to be there for somebody that has lost a loved one and they don't know how to have that conversation, how to be a support with them?
Right.
What recommendations would you have to that individual to let them know ways that they can positively be a support to somebody who might be grieving?
There is a great article by Megan Devine. I believe it's called How to Help a Grieving Friend. And it is very practical. And it's very, like, don't do this. This is silly.
Yeah.
So things like grief belongs to the griever. Don't try to fix this. Be practical. Like, offer to be the go-between. Like, if somebody's like, I just can't handle any more phone calls, have them call me, and I will filter out the ones that aren't unnecessary.
Right.
Or call and say, can I walk your dog? Can I go get your prescription? So Megan Devine, she has a website. Of course, it's going to escape me. But she's also written a book called It's Okay Not to Be Okay. So if you look her up, you're going to find her website. You'll find her. But if it's for a child, I would recommend like the Dougie Center. They have a great host of resources in English and in Spanish. They've got videos. They've got activities. But honestly, reach out to a professional. Ask if you have, an existing mental health therapist. Ask them, do you have any training in grief and loss? Apart from, graduate training. Do you have any continuing education in that? And if no, reach out to Bluegrass Care Navigators or your local hospice if you're not in our area. Most hospices, all hospices are required to have some form of bereavement support. We actually have in the Lexington area 3 bereavement counselors. So Lexington and Jessamine County, but our other surrounding counties, we have an additional 6 counselors. So someone in one of our 32 counties, should be covered.
Yeah, and we have a grief counselor in our Frankfort office, which covers Woodford County.
Oh, cool, okay.
And so anybody in the Woodford County area can reach out to our Frankfort office bereavement counselor as well.
Yes.
And be seen there.
We'll have a lot of information here, everybody, in this post, probably the post that you clicked on this link to listen to. So, we'll have
That's
a lot
what I was, making sure we got all these resources that you've mentioned, because they're crucial. Not only like with what you're saying, we want to be able to follow up with all these resources that you've mentioned.
and just have it available. I mean, that's what this is about. But
I can send you the link to the article.
Yes,
Okay.
that would be awesome.
Megan
It's so that's so true. Like it. I mean, I learned how to be there for somebody through this. And then I think back and go, holy crap, like before I felt, stupid, honestly. And then, because as I'm grieving, I remember getting those type of calls, and it was hard. And I never was like, why would you say it? Like, I never, ever was like that, because I just appreciated the fact that they're calling and saying something. But yeah, I 100% agree with you. Like, there was normally the one thing that some people would say that I thought was right on the money was they would say there are no words, that they would call and go, buddy, like there are just no words. And I'm like, there isn't. And that was it. I mean, that just that right there.
And there don't have to be words.
Right. Yeah. And I thought that was one of the strongest calls of support. But yes, the people that like, hey, let me, make dinner, or can I go run? Like that's great. It's hard for me, again, the way my family was to accept that and be like, no, I'm fine. I got it.
Right.
But yeah, it's just, I now after that, it's like, now I kind of know how to be a little bit more supportive, in that grief. So,
And I think we have to be creative in understanding how people are helping or how people are grieving, because not everybody is going to be, I want to talk about it. Let's sit around and talk about it.
Right.
I want to get out all my
they
feelings.
have no,
Yes. Some of them are the doers. Some of them are the ones that come over and
Right.
let's say it was, your mom's son-in-law, I don't know if she had one, but let's just say
Yeah.
she had one, and he comes over and he mows her lawn because he knows you guys are exhausted.
Yeah.
Because grief takes a lot out of you emotionally and
does.
physically.
Yes, it does.
So it could be the people who are doing things for you. That's their form of supporting you, but it's also their form of grieving.
And just a look, like a hug.
Yeah.
I mean, you can always know when it's like they just give you this look, and it's hard because like then you see that, and then you know what they mean. It's unspoken, and then the tears come.
Absolutely.
I think that also brings up a great point too. Is I think as a society, we don't want to cause or inflict pain onto other people,
Right.
and grief is such a
Do I bring it up? Do I not bring it
it's
up?
a challenging place because
Right.
anytime you talk about somebody who's recently passed away, you're probably going to bring up some emotion in that loved one, and it could
Yes.
come across as painful, but it also can be healing. And so I think one of the stigmas around talking about loss is that you are causing more pain for the person by talking about it. And
Yeah.
I think to your point, Dr. King, know your person that you're talking to,
Right.
if that's something that is actually helpful. But I'd say more likely than not, by talking about it, you're at least helping them
Yeah.
along that healing process in
I
some
think
way.
you think of it like physical therapy. Physical therapy doesn't always feel good in the moment. It's after weeks of physical therapy that you see the healing.
Yeah.
And I think talking about their loved one, especially if you can share, moments that, you learned something from them or where they were a help to you.
Yes.
I remember being, early married. My mom was already gone, but my cousin had come up to me and said, when I was struggling as a single mom and in nursing school, your mom sent me a check and I want to pay it forward. And we just had a big bill come in that we didn't know how we were going to pay. So even in her grief, she was sharing with me, even though it was years later.
Yes.
You just never know. Just show up, just
Yeah.
show up. That's the sweetest thing. I had a friend whose dad died when I was in college, and I didn't know any of her family. I only knew her. But she told me later that just having one person sitting there quietly just for her, not for her dad, her mom, or her siblings, but just to see somebody in that congregation that was just there for her made a big
Yeah.
difference.
Oh gosh, yes.
That is huge.
Yeah, I had a buddy who got there before, stayed the whole time, stayed after. Yeah, just and then, and then like surprised me. Like even like I was working in the backyard because I was trying to do something, and just sitting there working, and then I see him come through the door, and I just lost it because I knew like he was there to just to support me. It was awesome. Yeah.
And in the way that he knew best. That's
Yeah.
what I've got. So just an example, because this is, I feel like this is how we relate and connect. So I'm gonna be like you. I don't know if I'm gonna be able to get through this.
Yeah.
So we moved to Versailles 8 years ago. And we have made a ton of friends. Some of the best people, and through my work and through, just kids, you meet people. But a lot of the people that have followed up with me, because like I said, my mom just passed late February, were my friends from that I haven't even really spoken to as often as I needed to, but they're friends that I actually lost their parents or a parent 10, 15 years ago. They're the ones that text at, the most random times, but it ends up being the times that you really, really needed it.
Yeah. It's wild.
I've got one that is she's just got a strong faith, and she sends me prayers in the mail.
Oh.
I mean, she's my friend that still does like
Yes.
canning and everything. Listen, she's an old soul trapped in a young woman's body. But she'll bring the kids candy and drop it off on the front porch when she's in Versailles. I mean, just things
Yeah.
like that. And so they get it. and a lot of my friends don't, because they're younger than me, and their parents
Right.
are. My parents were older. They lost a child. My brother's 7 years older, and then they lost a child in between. So I was younger. So my parents are, in their later 70s. And so for my friends, their parents are still coming to like all their kids' games and, all these things. So I think you hit the nail. Like, they don't know, they think they're going to bring up a sore spot with you.
Right.
And
Yeah.
it's not. It's actually, it may make me, teary. But that's good.
Yeah.
But I want to ask you all about crying, because I grew up in a family that was, if you don't stop crying, I'm going to give you something to cry about.
Oh, for
Maybe,
sure.
I don't know if you've ever heard that.
Yeah.
So, my dad was military, like, just, and even still to this day, God love him. He is like my number one supporter next to my husband. But when I cry, it makes him very uncomfortable. And I was on the phone with him the other day, and I was trying to hide that I was crying. And I was like, you are 43 years old.
Yeah.
Why are you?
What are you doing?
Right?
Yeah, I know. It sneaks up back in you, man.
And I'm like,
Yeah.
and he's like, all right now. Or, he's trying to kind of rush me
Right.
through that process. And I was like, Dad, it actually helps.
Yeah.
And if you would try
Try it,
maybe
yeah.
let out an emotion or two.
We'll do
Yeah,
it together.
exactly, yes.
I could come over right now.
Yes. And so I wanted to talk about that release. And what I've read is that, it creates endorphins, or maybe like, so I would love for you to speak on that, to make me not think that I'm like making it worse for myself.
Well, you have to realize, bless his heart, and thank you for his service, that he's uncomfortable with your crying because he can't fix it.
Oh,
He
man.
doesn't want you to hurt, and he wants to fix it, and he can't. And so we're just not gonna have it.
Yes.
But grief is gonna come out. It's gonna leak out through your eyes. It's gonna come out in your sleep, or your appetite, or your energy level. It's gonna come out, and we can either control release like a pressure cooker.
Yeah, like a
We
dam.
can just a little bit at a time.
Yes.
Or we can have it explode all over. The choice really is yours. And so you can do all of the things that you need to do: exercise, eat healthy, get something good to eat in your body, talk to your friends, pray or meditate or whatever you do for your spiritual health. And you can take care of it a little bit at a time, but it is going to leak out. It is love. Grief is love with nowhere to go is one of the quotes.
Wow. Yeah.
As it leaks out. But it does, tears. I don't know all of the, medical stuff behind it, but I have read that, it helps release some of the stress hormones and things like that. And so, as we were going to talk a little bit later about a book by Charlie McKeesey, I don't know if I'm saying his name. He wrote a book called The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse, and it's really about friendship. But there's so much wisdom in there that you can take away, little nuggets for mental health or grief or whatever. But one of the things one of the characters says is that tears aren't a sign of our weakness; they're a sign of our strength. Because when we're vulnerable with one another, it helps us bond to that other person, and we're not alone.
That makes
Wow.
so much sense.
I think we had talked earlier, this is going way back, about grief being like a cut.
Yeah.
For some relationships it's more like an amputation.
Yeah.
Oh gosh. Yeah.
Especially if you think of those really long-standing marriages.
Like phantom limb
Yeah,
syndrome.
right.
exactly.
Yeah, for sure.
And it's that idea that you have pain or an itch or something, from something that's no longer with us. Again, it's that brain connection
It's
of,
bizarre. Yeah.
I haven't quite realized that limb or that person is not here anymore.
That's you couldn't have.
Yeah.
Yeah, that's right on. And I think
All of these have been right on, man.
I know this. I don't want this to end. I really don't.
Well, I'm not done talking.
Well, good, because I want to hear more. Everything you say, I want to take notes.
I wanted to talk a little bit about children's grief.
Yes.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yes.
The Children's Bereavement Estimate Model took a look at all of the different states and kind of ranked them as far as childhood bereavement risk.
Mm-hmm.
And wouldn't you know, we made the top 10.
Oh.
That's not a good thing.
So
Kentucky
did, yeah.
is 6th in the nation for childhood bereavement. And the estimate is that 1 in 9 children will lose a parent or sibling before the age of 18.
Oh, goodness.
And if you take that up to 25, it increases significantly because of drug overdose and things like that.
Yeah.
And so if you think about Woodford County public school numbers, and you do the math a little bit, I think I came up with about 445 children within the Woodford County public school system will be bereaved before the age of 18. And so we have a lot of kids that have lost a significant person in their life. And what we see with bereavement is similar to what we see with other childhood traumas, like maybe not physical abuse or sexual abuse, but a parent leaving because they have a mental illness, or leaving because they have a substance abuse, or they're incarcerated. We see a lot of the same trajectory. Without help, they can have school and learning problems. They can have behavioral problems, mental health issues, which then, if continued to be untreated, can lead to lifelong problems.
Yeah. I mean, if I didn't have, I still had I have a daughter, I have a wife, I have a family to take care of. I mean, that definitely kept me, because could I have curled up in a ball and stayed inside forever or not? I could have totally done that, but it was that responsibility that I was like, I gotta go to work. I've got to do this. Yeah.
So, Dr. King, can you talk a little bit about the ways that Bluegrass Care Navigators is able to be there for teens, for children and adolescents through their grief process? What services we might provide to the community here in Woodford County?
We generally say that we work with kids age 6 and older, because under the age of 6, you generally are going to see kids do more play therapy than talk therapy, and we're just not equipped for that space at this moment. But we do have community partners that will see kids younger. Okay. But anyway, so 6 on up, we have individual or family if they would rather. And we work with kids a little bit differently. So we call it shoulder-to-shoulder therapy versus face-to-face therapy. So we might be working on a craft, or we might be outside blowing bubbles. We might, I took a kid on we have these little frogs with, they're like beanbag frogs with emotions on them. And so I hid him in our little garden, and we had a little lost and found and seek and find. And then we talked about the different emotions and when he or she might have experienced those during the grief process. So we have individual and group, but that all culminates in kind of our big activity, which is Camp Hope, which happens once a year. It's a 1-day camp for kids 6 to 17, where we do activities that have a grief-related theme. So in years past, we have gone to different venues, but this year we will be at the Kentucky Horse Park. So that'll be a first for me, but they certainly have hosted camp there before. It was just before my time. So we will have some hands-on work with horses on the ground, not riding, but hands-on horse things. But we also have our music therapist that's coming, our art therapist that's coming.
Cool.
And we have a social worker who's going to do some yoga. So we have all different ways to think about and work with big emotions again, so that we can let them out a little bit at a time instead of one big explosion. So even though it sounds, camp for bereavement, that sounds like sad. Well, yes, there are going to be moments where we're sad, but there are going to be moments where we're laughing. And what we see, or what we've seen in the past, is I'm thinking of one little girl in particular who was hiding behind grandma at the beginning of the day, was even afraid of the therapy dog that was there. Oh. And by the end of the day, she's running around, she's laughing, she's screaming, she's telling this little girl, when can we meet again? And so there's this progression where, yes, it's a very individual pain and hurt, but you see other kids who are going through similar losses, and there are some connections that are made that last. My understanding is that a few years ago, before my time, a couple of boys met at camp, and then they saw each other at the bus stop and realized they went to the same school.
Oh, cool.
And one of our bereavement counselors heard from the mom a couple of years ago saying that they were still best of friends because
Wow.
they just needed each other
Right.
at that time. Sorry, I get choked up.
Yeah, no.
gosh, yes.
Yeah, well, join the club.
Yeah.
Steven's next. He's the one with
We're gonna break it.
Oh my goodness. Yeah.
Oh, gosh.
That's so when is Camp Hope this year?
So it is June 14th, and we are full.
Full.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, full because there's only a limited number of horses that they have.
Right.
Okay.
And staff that they have, and we are also limited to the number of bereavement counselors we have.
Do you all do any type of content, any type of pictures or videos or anything like that of the camp at all?
Yes. In fact, I don't know if it's still up on our website, but
Okay,
we have interviews from last year's camp.
Oh, great.
Of
Okay.
families and kids that talked about what their experience was like. We're hoping to do that every year.
Yeah.
So
Just
there's
something to
obviously
help
a huge
people.
need
Yeah.
for this.
Because we actually have a second camp in southeast Kentucky that's
Okay.
run out of Hazard, and so we do technically run two camps, but we call this one our Central Kentucky camp.
And I'm glad to hear that it's full. Obviously, that can't help every kid in Central Kentucky through camp this year, but it's something that we'd love to continue to grow as the need and the interest for something like that happens. This camp is completely funded by philanthropic support for us, and so
Incredible.
we're able to do this because of donors in the community who realize how important something like this is for our kids, and through various grants and things as well. So as we continue to get more support for camp, we want to be able to see it grow for sure,
That'd be
as
awesome.
well as our other bereavement services.
One of the other things that we can think of that isn't full
Yeah.
is Children's Grief Awareness Day, which is the third Thursday of November every year.
Okay.
We are going to, in conjunction with Kentucky Center for Grieving Children and Families, host a seat at the table event where we hope, knock on wood, to have local artists pair with families to paint or decorate a chair. Or
cool.
if they're younger, maybe a cloth paper mat or cloth placemat. And then we're going to sit down and have a dinner together with our chairs and our placemats
Ow.
to honor our loved ones.
That is incredible.
So that one is open to the community. We will have, limited seating,
Right.
but it is not full yet.
Awesome. Well, there you go.
So one of the ways that you can find out about these events is to go to our website. We have grief care as one of our services, and then you scroll down to the bottom, and it will have a calendar of events. It will list the groups that are ongoing and upcoming, and then it will list, like camp and different things. But also, I think we are on Facebook and Instagram.
Yep.
And
on the gram.
LinkedIn, maybe.
We are on LinkedIn,
Yeah.
yes.
So
I'm looking at bgcarenav.org.
Yes, that's our
Okay.
website. And then it's specifically for any of our grief services, you can go to bgcarenav.org/grief.
Okay.
Cool. Yeah, I wanted to make sure that was out there. We're heading towards kind of the end of the show, but I know you guys have a lot, so I
Well,
wanted to make sure you all got through it.
Yeah, and I just want to touch on too, if we can move forward in other services that we're providing to
Yes,
the community.
absolutely.
Just general grief care and bereavement services to the community at large. Of course, we are there for family members who've had individuals go through our hospice care, but
Okay.
about half of our grief care that we provide is to the community wide. So you don't have to necessarily have had somebody
Right.
gone through hospice in order to receive grief care and bereavement services from us. And so if you are somebody who has recently lost somebody, whether that is through a tragedy or something unexpected, reach out to us,
Right. I
and
was just gonna
we'd be
say.
happy to either help you or help guide you towards
Right.
a resource in the community that could also be of assistance to you.
That's a huge
That's
load
huge.
off, someone's shoulders. It's just like, don't worry about remembering all this. You can totally just get a hold of you all through either Facebook and Instagram or the website. and you all
then-
can just take it from there.
And you can also
Awesome.
call us at 855-492-0812, and somebody will be able to talk to you
Beautiful.
about that.
Okay, I wanted to talk about because here at the health department, I had mentioned in the beginning, the health department is more on the prevention side. You all are kind of all sides, but mostly sorry. But we're on the prevention side. You all are kind of on the different side of that as far as care. So what we do here at the health department, we have our HANDS program, which is the Health Access, Nurturing, and Developmental Services. That's the home visitation program that anyone that is expecting a child or has had a child within the past 90 days is really eligible. And I say that it's very broad. There's a broad acceptance rate. A lot of people connect the health department with sometimes lower financial individuals, lower earnings, that type of thing. And that's not always the case. Sure, we have programs like that make sure that no one falls through the cracks. However, our HANDS program is different. There are other funding sources, even if you do or don't have insurance. So we know parents, a new child, even having, even if you've had 3 kids and you have another one come home, that one can be completely different. So what we do in that program is we make sure mom and dad are ready for the baby or caregiver, and then we see that child and that family up to age 3 and make sure that they're growing and developing properly, and then we pull in other partners as needed. So if baby toddler isn't walking, things like that, we're gonna make sure that the supports are there. But also as a bigger umbrella, we have maternal child health programs, and one of those is actually the child fatality review component. So if we have, and we hope and pray that we never do, a child fatality, this team meets and collectively reviews the entire case, offers insight into what happened, what could have prevented it, how can we do better, that type of a thing. And so we are very appreciative of partners like Bluegrass Care Navigators, because we can't do everything.
Can't all do it all.
But knowing what supports are out there is critical to having, folks, being able to we don't even have to go very far to get to, what are you all, 30 minutes away? You
Not
can be
even
in,
that.
okay.
Yeah.
So being able to refer out these services is so very important. And so very thankful for what you all do. I had heard of Camp Hope, but I hadn't heard exactly what you all do there. But that's amazing and so needed. Mm-hmm. And I'm sad and glad that you're full. That means you're getting to the kids that really need this the most. And there's potential for growth there, I'm sure. I wondered if you all had ever worked with Life Adventure Center here.
That's where our camp was the last
okay.
2 years.
Cool.
Yeah.
Okay, well
Yeah.
then I was going to say that'd be a great. Okay,
a great
They do a
area.
great job.
Yeah.
They do.
They are, really quick to, like, if the weather changes or whatever, they are really quick to be able to, just immediately,
That's beautiful.
plan B.
They're good people down there, man.
absolutely.
Yeah.
They've got that huge barn too, and then all
yeah.
the bunks, and then that recreation. We've done some. workforce development training out there. So they do
It's
a
a fun
little bit of
area.
everything.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And-
They're great.
Yeah. So that I'm glad that you all are connected to them already.
Yeah.
Huge resource. Lucky to have them in our area.
Yeah. They're great.
Oh, it's an absolute great tool. I mean, it's, you were saying, I like to describe it as, I got a guy.
I
Like, you know what I mean? Like, I'm not gonna operate on myself, or I'm not gonna, do, like, why try to do that? I'd rather go to professionals who do it all the time.
Absolutely.
Who see things and know more than I do. I'm only as good as the people that surround me, and yeah, this is amazing. You guys are awesome.
Yes.
Well, I wanted to say, and you can put this anywhere you want in the podcast, but I wanted to
Oh yeah.
kind of revisit the book.
Yes.
The Boy, the Mole, the Fox, and the Horse. Actually, that's a very huge part of our camp this year because it is horse themed.
Yeah.
But anyway, there was a conversation between the boy and the horse, and I'll read it to you. What is the bravest thing you ever said? Asked the boy. Help, said the horse. When have you been at your strongest? Asked the boy. When I have dared to show my weakness. Asking for help isn't giving up, said the horse. It's refusing to give up.
That's
Love
awesome.
that.
And the only reason I'm talking with a straight voice is because you mentioned us to that earlier.
I know.
And
I gave you fair warning.
Yes.
yeah, that help was, man, yeah, that's the bravery to be able to ask for help. As I mentioned earlier, it was tough for me to do. But man, I had no shortage of people in the around that was there for me in different ways. So
Absolutely.
Well, and think about the times when you've been able to help somebody else.
Exactly.
How did it make you feel?
exactly,
Right.
I'm glad you mentioned that. That's like to turn around and pay it forward, and to know that feeling. Obviously you don't always know the exact thing because you know your person, like you also mentioned earlier. But man, yeah, it does help. There's nothing like it.
But if you deny somebody their ability to help you, you're denying them that joy that they could experience as well. Because giving is equally as beneficial as receiving.
Oh yeah.
Absolutely. And with coverage, I just have to ask this because we're probably going to have phone calls once people listen to this,
Sure.
Do you all take Medicaid, Medicare,
Oh.
private pay, insurance? Like what?
I'll let you speak to that.
and that may be another visit to the website.
Yeah. So there is a specific requirement, and Dr. King, correct me if I'm wrong on this, with hospice family members being able to provide that grief bereavement service. We do something that is above and beyond that basic requirement of Medicare, CMS, by having counselors that will actually meet with individuals. For the community at large, we're able to provide these services because of donors. We don't charge for our services. And because we have philanthropic support from the community, we're able to do that for individuals who need it. If there is an opportunity where their insurance will cover what we do, we'll certainly go that route. But if somebody does not have insurance that covers it, or it's something that they really need that we're able to provide them, we're able to do that because of donor support.
Don't let that stop you. Is what you're saying.
Exactly.
Sounds like the health department.
Yeah.
You can get a flu shot here if you have insurance. We'll charge it, but you're not gonna get a copay because it's preventative. And like you said earlier, Dr. King, I want to go back to that because you mentioned, mental health and seeing someone is so important. And we really wish that it was covered, universally. It really should be. I think that would prevent a lot of other mental health.
Right.
And physical
Yes,
health issues.
exactly.
Mental health has such a connection to your physical health that if you
wonder-
go and
100%.
ignore it,
Yes,
it's going to cause issues with other things.
you are
For sure.
exactly right. And I want to speak on that too. So I don't want to forget because there's something really important about that. But were you going to say, sorry?
That's okay.
Oh, no.
I've got my wheels turning. We were talking about insurance and does insurance cover our services? And I haven't been in private practice for a while, so this may be old news. But before, when I was in private practice, you couldn't bill for grief alone because it was what we consider a Z code. It wasn't a billable code. You have to bill for something like depression or anxiety or what we call adjustment disorder. So it almost pathologizes grief because you can't just bill for grief. Now you can bill for prolonged grief disorder, which is a whole other thing. But I just think, why does something have to be an illness before insurance will cover it?
Right.
Gosh.
I mean, if we treat these things like our colonoscopies, what are the rates of colon cancer? Are they lower now that we have that? Free screening.
Yeah.
Right.
I know
question.
that
Let's go to the board.
I know that
Yeah.
it does. Mammograms do early prevention,
Exactly.
and detection can save lives. Well, it's the same with our mental health.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Mm-hmm.
Stephen, you brought up a point about physical health and the connection to mental health.
Right.
And I did speak briefly about this in another podcast, but during the pandemic, being a public health director was probably not the easiest job.
Mm-hmm.
And while our community, for the most part, stayed fairly united, there were some things that were very stressful, some threats and things that were specific, I guess, not only to the health department, but to me. And I ended up in the hospital with colitis. And so I would go as far back as elementary school. I dealt with anxiety all day, every day, it felt like. Never had an outlet, was never medicated. And then I'm 39 years old. I'm in the hospital with unspecific colitis, which means there's no reason.
Right.
There was not a bacteria present. There was not any kind of underlying health issue physically. But I was dealing with more than I ever had professionally and probably personally because of that, because I had a lot of friends who just absolutely turned on me because of my position. So anyway.
Wild.
The hospitalist and the gastroenterologist came into my room because I was admitted for several days, and they were talking, they were kind of going down the list because they're trying to figure out why this happened. And the only thing that they could figure out was stress.
Right. Yeah.
Stress went to your gut, and that's why you're here. There's really no other reason. We've had you here several days. That was when I first tried anti-anxiety or and I know a lot of the medicines are actually for depression, but they treat anxiety, which I've never had a lot of the depressive parts. But I always laugh, and I shouldn't laugh, but I always say I'm a lifer.
You gotta lie.
Like this is what's changed my life. I'm better for my job. I'm better for my family. I'm better for myself for taking the medicine, and it was nothing that I found quickly. There were several things that I tried, didn't work. I did not give up because I knew something had to change, or I could die. I mean, colitis is one of those things. If your bowel ruptures, So I said all that to say it doesn't matter when and where you are in your life. There could be nothing going on. It could be something that's come from your past, or it could be a current event. Don't be afraid to try the medication if that's what you and your prescriber or provider have talked about. And don't quit if the first one doesn't work. Keep trying, because there's probably something out there that will change your life. I'm still the same person. I still have a ton of emotion.
Yes, exactly. It doesn't. I mean, there are some that make you a zombie and other side effects that I had to switch, because I was big on like stigma. Like I was like, I'm not taking crazy pills, But it's like, wait a second, that's immature, and this is awesome, and it's made a world of difference. I mean, I had the ulcer.
Yes.
So like that, I didn't know you could be physically hurt
Yeah.
with mental. I'm like, what are you talking about? That sounds crazy. And it's like, no, that's what it is.
That's
So
Well, our
I'm
brains
with you
don't
on
know
that.
the difference between real danger,
Right.
imagined danger, a reminder of something from the past that was traumatic. It's going to respond the same way because the brain's job is to keep you alive. And if it worked in the past, it's going to do it again
Right.
and
Yeah.
again and again until we figure out a different way to do it. And so whether it's medication or therapy, and really the strongest evidence is for a combination of the two things. You know, we have to figure out a different way to manage our stress, or loss or whatever, in order for our brain to also, come along and say, oh, okay, so I don't have to react this way
Right,
every
yeah.
time. Oh, okay. Well, let's try something different then.
absolutely.
You mentioned
Absolutely.
earlier the book A Grieving Mind. There's a follow-up to that book, A Grieving Body.
Yes.
And
whoa,
it
okay.
really takes a look at the physiological effects that grief and mental
Had no
wellness
idea.
can have on your body. So for those who are interested in learning more about that, I would highly recommend that book as well.
Yeah, do it. Yeah, read it, and it's better to read that and be prepared than have it being done to you in the moment and being like, what is happening? Like, I can't, why is this not working?
And when you don't
Yeah.
know, it's
Yeah.
scary.
It is
But if
very
you can
scary. Yeah.
understand why things are happening, it makes it a little
Makes
bit
it-
more manageable, I think, too.
Absolutely, for sure.
I don't know that I've ever taken this many notes during a
No,
podcast.
and I'll tell you what, we have broken the record. We are almost at an hour.
This is not.
We normally
this
try
has
to
never
keep it about
happened.
15 to 30 minutes, and it hasn't felt that way, but this has been
No.
probably my favorite episode I've ever recorded.
I would
This has been
say
amazing.
I think grief is something that we as a society don't like to talk about. And I think we have shifted the narrative today
Yeah.
by giving it the due diligence that
Yes.
it well deserves.
Hear,
And I would
hear.
encourage anybody to talk about
Mm-hmm.
their grief with a friend, a family member, or a licensed provider.
Absolutely. That
Boom.
great.
That
yeah,
was it. That's
that was
sign off,
it.
right?
Yes, absolutely. Thank you both.
Yes.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. This
So
has
very
been,
much.
I feel great.
I know. This has been wonderful.
Yes.
Even though it was a topic that, like I said, it's not easy to talk about.
sure.
But we've learned a lot, and hopefully we can keep these conversations going. And I'm sure we'll be working together in the future to further our missions because they're both so very similar.
Very much.
Thank you very
Thank
much.
you.
Thank you.